Welcome to this explainer. If you're moving goods globally right now, you already know the harsh reality. The exact same choke points that power global trade can literally bring it to its knees overnight. Today, we're breaking down the severe, cascading impacts of the Bab el-Mandeb Strait disruptions. We're going to look at exactly how this tiny, 18-mile waterway is silently eating away at your export margins, completely upending supply chains, and most importantly, what you can do to protect your business. 4,500. That is a massive number. It represents the exact extra nautical miles ships have to travel when they are forced to reroute around the Cape of Good Hope. We're talking about a staggering 29% increase in journey length. And, that fundamentally rewrites the math of international shipping. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll cover the choke point crisis, cascading logistical impacts, hidden financial traps, sector-specific squeezes, and finally, strategic routes and solutions. Let's dive right in. Starting off with Section 1, the choke point crisis, and why it's the absolute epicenter of global trade. To really grasp the stakes here, just look at these numbers. This single geographic bottleneck handles up to 15% of all global maritime trade. That includes a massive 12% of all seaborne oil and 8% of global LNG transit. It's the most direct line connecting Asia's manufacturing powerhouses and the Gulf's energy hubs straight to European markets. So when a lane this vital becomes dangerous, the economic ripples are immediate, and they hit absolutely everyone. Moving on to Section 2. Let's look at the cascading logistical impacts, taking us from the ocean right into your office. When you bypass the Red Sea, you're tacking on up to 14 extra days of transit time. A journey that used to take 30 days, now it's stretching up to 50. This violently strains vessel capacity because carriers suddenly need more ships just to maintain their normal frequency. And, as you can guess, this completely breaks the just-in-time inventory models that the automotive and retail sectors rely on so heavily. And the costs are just astronomical. Beyond the millions in extra bunker fuel for the longer trip, if a vessel actually still chooses to enter the high-risk zone, insurance war risk premiums have skyrocketed. We're talking going from virtually negligible levels to as high as 2% of the hull's total value. That's a massive immediate cost that operators either have to eat or pass on to you. That brings us to Section 3, the hidden financial traps, specifically looking at CIF valuation and letter of credit discrepancies. This quote really hits the nail on the head. While everybody is naturally watching those obvious surging freight rates, the quietest killer of your export margins is actually happening on your balance sheet. The real existential danger is working capital contraction and unexpectedly skyrocketing tax liabilities. So here is the compounding trap, and it is absolutely brutal. In jurisdictions like the EU and the GCC, your import duties and VAT are calculated on the CIF value, cost, insurance, and freight. So if ocean rates surge from $2,000 to $6,000, your CIF baseline instantly expands by $4,000. Boom! As a direct result, your destination customs duties and taxes skyrocket. Your final tax bill massively inflates, even if the actual price of your product hasn't changed by a single dollar. And it gets worse. That 14-day transit delay we mentioned, it triggers severe documentary discrepancies on letters of credit. If your delayed arrival pushes document presentation past the stipulated latest shipment date, banks can legally freeze your payments. It's a brutal trade finance squeeze, locking up your working capital precisely when you desperately need liquidity to cover those soaring freight rates. All right, Section 4, sector-specific squeezes, from petrochemicals to agriculture. The pain points here really depend on exactly what you're shipping. If you're an exporter dealing in petrochemicals, you're battling insane spot rates fighting for a limited supply of specialized liquid bulk vessels. But if you're an agricultural trader, you've got a totally different nightmare. You're dealing with spoilage. You have to absorb massive, unbudgeted costs for refrigerated reefers just to prevent grain from sweating and molding during a 14-day detour through intense equatorial heat. Now we have to talk about the absolute nightmare scenario, a compounded dual choke point crisis. If regional tensions simultaneously disrupt the Strait of Hormuz, which all by itself handles 20% of global oil flows, we're looking at a catastrophe. Up to 30% of the world's seaborne energy and LNG could be bottlenecked all at once. That's the kind of shock that entirely redefines global markets. Which leads us to our final section, Section 5. Strategic routes and solutions to build true resilience. So, what are the pros doing? They're getting proactive. They're updating their contracts with Maritime and BIMCO clauses to clearly limit force majeure claims. They're ditching pure just-in-time for strategic inventory buffering. And, cleverly, they're deploying sea-air hybrid routes via Gulf hubs like Jebel Ali, shipping by sea to the Gulf, then flying the rest, which cuts transit times for critical parts back down to just 6 to 8 days. But a quick warning here. If you do shift to those multimodal transit hubs, watch out for the free trade agreement compliance trap. Many FTAs require direct consignment to get zero duty rates. If your cargo is routed through a hub, you have to proactively secure a certificate of non-manipulation from that transit hub's customs authorities. If you don't, you risk legally disqualifying your shipment from those preferential tariffs, kissing any cost savings goodbye. To bypass the water risks altogether, some tactical operators are mapping their supply chains onto entirely new geopolitical land bridges. Think Omani deepwater ports like Salalah and Duq that sit safely outside the choke points. Or check out Iraq's massive $17 billion development road, an emerging 1,200-kilometer high-speed rail network linking the Gulf Strait to Turkey. These are huge overland arteries bypassing the threats completely. To manage all this chaos, the Tendify platform ecosystem basically acts as your digital command center. It gives you a customs and duty calculator to predict those CIF tax shocks we talked about in real time, container load optimization to squeeze every inch out of expensive reefers, and contract tools to build flexible payment milestones that totally bypass those rigid banking bottlenecks. If there's one big takeaway from this explainer, it's this: resilience beats prediction every single time. The traders who actually thrive during these shocks don't just survive, they grab new market share while their competitors scramble. They do this by treating logistics not just as a background task, but as a core strategy powered by data, flexible contracts, and digital tools. Which brings us to our final thought. As you prepare to negotiate your next export contract, ask yourself this: is your supply chain strategy built just for prediction, assuming clear sailing, or is it built for true resilience? Take a hard look at your operations and think about how you can start turning global volatility into your calculated advantage. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and I will see you next time.